it can be used for other things too, like the Spaces protocol, like naming, like decentralized naming. I think the block space is super valuable. It's a decentralized ledger, it's a completely decentralized and secure, backed by all this power, proof of work power. And there's not, like, that's such a super valuable thing, and money is a great use case for it, but I think there's other things. I am super excited to see what other things, and I do think naming will be a good example of something that is really important and urgent to do that can be used on Bitcoin. It doesn't take away from Bitcoin at all. In fact, helps it, because it'll help with fees and stuff. So I hope Spaces Protocol helps Bitcoin and things like that help it.
Welcome to the Bitcoin Source, the podcast where we dive headfirst into the wild, revolutionary world of Bitcoin and the mind shaping its future. I'm Dawdu, and today we've got a heavy hitter in the studio, Mike Carson, serial entrepreneur, Bitcoin OG, and the man who's not just rebooting Friendster, the original social network, but also building Spaces Protocol, a game-changing decentralized naming system on Bitcoin. This guy's been in the game since 2013. He ran some of the first Lightning Network nodes and even made some, physical purchases early in the game. So without further ado, Mike, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So Mike, since this is your first time here, let's kick this off with kind of like, some of your early beginnings, how you got started into Bitcoin, how did you get orange pilled?
Yeah, I read Hacker News. I've read Hacker News for like 15 years or so. I remember at the beginning, like, there was a few posts, I'd check it every day and read it every day. And there was a few posts about this Bitcoin. And it sounded interesting, but I don't know, sometimes you just breeze past it, like the first couple of times I saw it. But then like the third time or something like that, I was like, well, this sounds interesting. I got to check this out. And when I started reading about it, I was like, wow, this is really cool. This makes a lot of sense. And then once I read the white paper, I was like, whoa, this this is revolutionary. This solves a problem that's never been solved before in human history. So then, ever since then, I loved it, and I also just really love the ideals behind it, like the cypherpunk ideals, and I was really into that, and I still am. So yeah, been in it since. Yeah, so just to give you a little bit more background, that was around 2012 or something, and then I I invested in 2013, and since then, yeah, I read the book on, Mastering Bitcoin by Andreas Antonopoulos, and got more into it. Went to BitDev meetups. I also set up one of the first 50 Lightning nodes on the Lightning Network and got into that a bit. And actually, yeah, I think I made the third purchase. I think I made the third purchase for physical goods on Lightning Network. Blockstream set up a little shop where they like sold stickers and stuff. That was the first time you could like buy something for like physical goods for it. And I made a purchase right away, and I emailed them and asked them, was I the first? And they said I was the third. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Bitcoin's early days were rough, right? You had scams, you had hacks, you had Mt. Gox blowing up, but you've been in the game for well over a decade. What's the craziest thing you've seen in the Bitcoin space that made you question whether this was all worth it?
Yeah, been a lot. It's all of like, yeah, the Mount Gox, like FTX. There's been some major things like that. And then, early on, right after I first invested, one of the core developers, I think it was Paul Kern or something, I forget, he dropped out, and he was like, wrote this big thing. He was like, Bitcoin is dead. And like this well-respected VC that I followed, Fred Wilson, was like, Bitcoin is. I always said it was a risky investment, and that, it made me nervous. It made me nervous. So like, I actually sold half my Bitcoin when that happened. But luckily, I said I'm going to buy it back if it keeps going up, and then I went to a new high, so I bought it all for a higher price. But at that point, after that, I was like, I'm not listening to anybody else. I'm not listening. Like I have, and then I had this conviction, and that's like, when you have conviction, that's like one of the most powerful things, because then you won't like stop or give up. And so I think that's like if you have conviction in something, it's like that's really good, and you should do whatever you can to like foster that, because that's having conviction of something is like that's what helped me to stay in Bitcoin through all of this stuff. And now it's like now there's ETFs and the president likes Bitcoin and stuff. It's crazy. It's definitely changed. Before, I remember when I was first telling friends about it, they were like, "Well, they're going to make that illegal. It's going to be illegal. Like you should definitely sell it at all. It's going to be illegal." But yeah, it's been crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. Let's talk about what you're building now, which is Spaces Protocol. For those who don't know, this is a decentralized naming system built on Bitcoin, giving users control over their online identities. And I think that as a Bitcoiner, that's huge, right? Online identity is kind of one of the big ethos of this whole entire protocol. And, there are a lot of people getting deplatformed because of some algorithm didn't like what you said or a particular tweet. So, Mike, could you break it down for us like we're 5 years old? What is Spaces Protocol and why does it matter?
Yeah. So besides Bitcoin, I also, just to give a little bit more context and background, I started Park.io in 2014, which is like a domain drop catching service, domain name drop catching service. And through that process, I managed 3 ICANN accredited registrars and worked with registries like Affilius and .ai registry. .ai. Learned through that whole process, like, I was super interested in domains and also Bitcoin, and I realized domain names are digital assets. They should definitely be on a blockchain. There's no reason not to have them on a blockchain. And I also saw through my experience with registries and registrars, names getting taken away from customers. Just the registries just decides you can't have the name anymore. And it's like the person has no say in it. And sometimes it was for really, I mean, it's for a lot of, there's politically motivated reasons that's happened, but there's also just been big companies, registries being afraid of being sued by big companies, so they just get the name, have the power to get the name that they want. But also, there's hacks like the Squarespace hack. People are forced to rely on a third party. It's like what Bitcoin did is take away the middleman, banks, and like the Federal Reserve and stuff like that. It's like, why do you need to ask somebody for your permission to use your money? Like it's this. I can understand before the blockchain was invented, like they didn't have a solution to that. But now that there's a solution, you don't need it. Bitcoin showed you don't need it, and there is a definite use case for that. Like people who live, especially people who live in countries where they, can't get access to banks, or they can't get access, have control of their money, or their money is inflated, like crazy. So there's huge use cases, and so also with domaining, it's like we don't need registrars. We don't need registrars and registries. You don't need permission. And it's not just domain names, it's usernames too. It's like, okay, so, Twitter or Instagram or YouTube, Facebook, they can take away your username anytime, no reason. They don't even have to tell you a reason or anything. They can just take it away, and you're helpless to it. So why do we need a third party to control our user, like our names? It's not, you don't need it. There's no reason. Actually, there's an urgent need. There's a very urgent need to have this decentralized for security reasons and just for freedom, for self-sovereignty. So this conviction that I have with Bitcoin, I have this super strong conviction from my experience with Bitcoin and also domain names, that this is so important and so urgent and valuable that it's inevitable. It's going to happen. And so that's why we've created the Spaces protocol, which is basically, it uses the Bitcoin blockchain for decentralized naming. So it's anchored. It uses Bitcoin, the Bitcoin blockchain, as a trust anchor to anchor in, so you can basically own your name just like you own your Bitcoin with your key, with your private key.
That's awesome. I love it. And, big tech is not going to like this, of course. And, I've been in the startup world, especially when you're doing these innovative fringe kind of technologies or innovations. These companies make billions of dollars off our data. Have you gotten any pushback yet? Any shady emails or calls from Silicon Valley saying like, hey, you should not do this, or try to nudge you off your path?
It's interesting. There's been pushback in some ways from different people, but it mostly seems that it's people who are really invested and entrenched in like the old way of doing things. And they don't see the value or understand why you would need something like that, like something like decentralized. It's kind of like the people who say banks work fine, the dollar works fine. Why do we need Bitcoin? There's no reason. It's just speculation. So there's a similar group of people who say the same things with domain names and usernames. But I think what will eventually happen is what's happening with Bitcoin is like the truth of the matter is that there is a need. Like it doesn't matter what people think. There really is a need, and people will. It's the conviction of like there's some people who have this super strong conviction that there's definitely a need for decentralized money, and that's what made it like now it's there's ETFs. Like the financial world is they opposed it for a while, but a lot of them did embrace it too. And I think the same thing will happen with naming. It's there'll be people with conviction who know that this is like super important, that you need it. There's an urgent need for it, and there will be people who oppose it because they're stuck in the old way of doing things. But then there will be the people who will come to embrace it because they realize that it's better. So I think it'll happen. I mean, I think it's like Bitcoin really, like the way I think of it is the Bitcoin blockchain. Like the blockchain is this amazing invention, and money was the first use case. Like money was the first killer app built on this, and it's awesome. It's like really, yeah, it's definitely needed, and it's a perfect first killer product to put on it. But there's other things. There's other things that are super important, and one is naming, decentralized naming. And so I think it'll be another like really valuable use case to put on Bitcoin, to use the block space.
100%. And I kind of want to take a trip down memory lane. Like, so Friendster, for the kids watching, this was like the social network before MySpace. Like for my generation, I was using MySpace in like junior high. This is before Facebook, before the TikTok algorithm. But you bought Friendster.com and you're planning to reboot it with a Bitcoin twist, which I found to be very interesting. So, why did you start fresh with a new brand? Why did you try to just bring back Friendster? Was there any like nostalgic reasons for internet history of bringing that back?
Yeah, I mean, it was. I loved Friendster when it first came out. Because it was the first social network. It was like the first time that social network was on the internet, and it was awesome. It was like, wow, you can connect with your friends, you can make new friends and stuff. But so I loved it when it first came out. But yeah, they couldn't scale it because it grew too fast, and so many people wanted to use it. And like I would just sit there and wait for it to load, and it would never load. And it's like eventually you're like, screw this. And I think that's what people did, and then moved to MySpace. But I still had some nostalgia for Friendster, and I would check the domain name every now and then, see what was going on. And then it didn't resolve for a long time. And then I checked it a few years ago, and all these ads popped up, and I was like, that's interesting. I wonder what's going on. So I looked up the who is information on the domain name, and I recognized the owner. He was a customer of Park.io, and so I reached out to him, and we worked out a deal. I bought it, and then I've been trying. I brought it back to what it was with like a just more of an updated interface, and I let a lot of beta users on, but I'm still trying to figure out exactly what I want to do. I would like to, have all the users have their own decentralized username, and actually I have Friendster on the Spaces protocol, so I would like to be able to give all the users their username, so like Mike at Friendster or whatever, so you could get that. So yeah, I'm still trying to figure out the best way to do that, but
Yeah, so, I always think about all these social apps we have right now. Gen Z is really glued to like the short form video stuff. And I always wonder, like, how is Friendster going to compete? Like, what's the secret sauce? And you mentioned that, the Spaces protocol ties into Friendster, right? So a lot of those decentralized names that have become like your Friendster family, could you walk us through like how that's going to feel for users? Are we talking like a slick Web3 vibe, or is this something completely new that you're doing?
yeah, I still haven't completely figured out what to do with Friendster. Because you're right, like it's not like social networking has changed. I mean, it's become in a lot of ways. That's why I got Friendster too, is because I didn't like the current state of social network. How it's like it's all run by advertisers, and they have these algorithms that really don't. It doesn't seem like they prioritize the user's well-being or anything. It's more about getting them addicted, and and like engaging in like drama and stuff like that. So I didn't like that, and I liked how original Friendster was. So I wanted to bring it back to that. Um, and I also am starting the Spaces protocol, so I would like it to be decentralized. There is like, I think a great use case for the Spaces protocol is like usernames on Nostr, and like Nostr is like, decentralized, kind of like, you know, decentralized social networks in a way, but it's hard to have a username. Like you have to, if you want to, you know, if you want to tell somebody your Nostr, you have to give them like an npub, this long key and stuff. So it'd be much easier if you could say, just find me Mike at Friendster or something. So I have thought about integrating, like building Friendster on top of Nostr, but then, it's hard because, when there's exchanges, like there's trade-offs you have to make with, if you do it decentralized, it's not as intuitive and user-friendly and stuff. So I'm still figuring it out.
Yeah, I would have to say the same thing about Nostr. Like, I've been an avid advocate and fan of Nostr since it came out. I'm still on Nostr, and I could slowly see, like, at one point you couldn't post pictures on there, you couldn't post videos. Now these things are coming into the fold, but it's a really slow, laborious process. So I definitely agree with you. Like, I think Friendster.com trying to keep up with the current trends of like what people on social networks want as an end user is just like a technical overload for someone that's been in the game as long as you have. Like you've seen it all, done it all. So it's like it's more of a hobby for you, and it's not like I want to entrench my entire life for the next decade into this to make it as intuitive as possible. So I get it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm still working on. I actually posted to Hacker News asking for like feedback on what to do with Friendster, and there's a lot of good feedback. And I had a call with a guy, and so yeah, I think we'll see what happens. I'm waiting for the right moment.
Mike, you've had a hell of a career. You've built Park.io, Wise Hive, it hit 10 million in revenue before its exit. You run domain registers. I mean, the list goes on and on. But entrepreneurship isn't all champagnes and exits. What's the darkest moment you faced as a founder? Like, was there a time where you said, man, I'm not sure if I can keep going with this, or is this just something that's like a soul passion for you no matter what happens? You're just dedicated to the mission.
Yeah, I mean it's hard, but my personality is like it's harder to be in like a corporate. Like I would be way more miserable in like, and I was way more miserable like in an office, like wearing a tie or something like that. Like that's horrible. Like yeah, I can never do, I can't do it. But like it is, yeah, there have been really hard times. Like when I first launched Park.io, there was like the whole idea was back orders for .io domains, which is makes it so people could get expiring .io domains. But then the .io registry, launched their own back orders, and I thought my business was dead. But then I figured out a way to make it useful, and it survived and did really well. And then I was running it all myself, and then when I had two kids within like a couple of years, and after the second baby was in the house and I'm trying to run the business all by myself, and also there was a lot of competitors coming in at the time. It was a really hard time then because I just couldn't focus. Like before I could focus like for hours on something and solve the problem, but with babies crying and stuff like that, it became really hard and overwhelming. But luckily, right around that time, somebody reached out. They had heard a podcast interview I did talking about Park.io, and they were really interested in the company. And we had a call, and he ended up becoming a partner at Park.io and joined. And so he took over a lot of it, which was a huge relief, like doing the day-to-day stuff. So yeah, I think there's a good book by Phil Knight, the guy who started Nike, Shoe Dog. And I
Yep.
remember reading that. I could really relate because he says something like, there's always, it seems like there's some huge deal breaking like obstacle that's going to ruin the whole company. Like, but then you just work at it and you figure out a way around it and you get through it. But then another huge, and so I feel like it's kind of like that. These huge obstacles come along, but then you just like really figure out a way through it, and then you get through it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Mike, you've been in tech for at this point 15 plus years, coding, building, hustling. Bitcoin's been with you for most of that ride. So where do you see Bitcoin in 2030? Are we paying for coffee with Lightning? Is Spaces protocol running the internet names, or is the government cracking down and we're here trying to trade Bitcoins like it's prohibition era whiskey times again.
I think it'll continue to, yeah, just be take. I mean, it's so valuable. People say they don't use like some people say it's that it's never used, but like for domain names, I use it a lot. With a .ai registry, it was so much more convenient to like just pay with Bitcoin, send them money in Bitcoin, me money in Bitcoin, like instead of trying to do bank wires or like to Anguilla, and stuff. And so it was so much more convenient. Even just like traveling, like if I'm traveling to another country, I don't want to bring cash, and I don't know if my credit cards are gonna, not work there, and or my bank account's not gonna let me use it. And so, if you want to be safe, like if you want to have access to, some money, then like it's like bring Bitcoin, like bring some Bitcoin. And it's amazing that like you can, you don't even have to carry a device. Like you can have it in your brain. Like you can just have it in your brain, like crossing borders with this and stuff. So I think it'll just continue. And there's like, I love the group. Like people realize that's what I love, like the cypherpunk. Like a lot of people work on it, not just because, like to make a lot of money. They're working on it because they believe in it. They believe that it's going to help the world. And, like they have a strong conviction that it's the right thing to do. And it's also it's a really interesting technological problem in a lot of ways. So I think a lot of smart people are working on it. A lot of smart people continue to work on it. And I think it'll continue to prosper. I mean, that's what it's done ever since I've been in it. I mean, there's been hiccups, bumps in the road, and stuff, and bear markets. It's the progress is steady progress in the right direction, and there's problems, like decentralization of miners or things like that. But smart people are working on it and recognize the problems, and so I think it'll continue that way. And I do hope that it can be used for other things too, like this. Like the Spaces protocol, like naming, like decentralized naming. I think the block space is super valuable. It's a decentralized ledger, it's a completely decentralized and secure, backed by all this power, proof of work power. And there's not like that's such a super valuable thing, and money is a great use case for it. But I think there's other things. I am super excited to see what other things, and I do think naming will be a good example of something that is really important and urgent to do that can be used on Bitcoin. It doesn't take away from Bitcoin at all. In fact, helps it because it'll help with fees and stuff. So I hope Spaces Protocol helps Bitcoin and things like that help it.
All right, Mike, and we're winding down, but we got to hit you with the Bitcoin Source rapid fire round. Short answers, no overthinking. Are you ready?
Okay, I'll do my best.
Satoshi Nakamoto, genius, ghost, or government plant?
Genius.
Best Bitcoin use case besides money?
Decentralized naming.
Worst crypto trend you've seen?
There's scammers. I mean, spammers, I think.
One piece of advice for someone buying their first Bitcoin today?
Read the white paper.
If Friendster 2.0 had one feature to beat X, what is it?
I think decentralized.
Nice. Thank you, Mike. You crushed that. All right, Mike, before we let you go, you're out here trying to give people freedom online with Spaces Protocol, bringing back to OGs with Friendster, and staying true to Bitcoin's roots. What's the one message you want the Bitcoin community to hear from you?
Yeah, I think just realize what's valuable. The block space is valuable, and like how we can like let's build on that. We can onboard so many more users. We can make Bitcoin much more powerful. And yeah, thanks so much for having me on the show. And also, if people want to learn more, they can go to spacesprotocol. And also, we're going to launch at Bitcoin names, so you can get like Mike at Bitcoin and stuff, and it'll be totally self-sovereign usernames on Bitcoin. And we're going to be launching that at bitcoin.com. So yeah, you can find that.
That's powerful, man. Mike Carson, thank you for dropping all this knowledge and fire on us today. Spaces Protocol, Friendster.com. Go check them out, folks. And who knows, maybe we'll be logging into Friendster with our decentralized name soon. To everyone watching, smash that subscribe button. Follow us on X at the Bitcoin Source. For more deep dives like this, Mike, you're welcome back anytime, brother. Until next time, keep stacking those sats and staying sovereign.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on the show.
Likewise. Thank you.